Hello there. So today I want to do a video about top 5 books that made me cry. And these are not going to be in any particular order, and they're definitely not the only books that have made me cry this much. But these are just 5 of the ones that made me really sob. And they're all, probably not surprisingly, young adult fiction, fantasy, sci-fi type of books. I think these are all interesting because I have very different reasons for being upset about each of them. But anyways, Mockingjay, which probably will not surprise anyone because The Hunger Games is really big right now, and this was definitely a devastating book, I'm pretty sure, to everyone who read it. I better, I guess, say that a lot of this video might contain spoilers for certain books and series. Actually, I think every one of these is an ending to a series. For those of you who do want to hear this, who have read the ending, you know what happens. And when I was reading this book, it was 2 in the morning, and I was sitting in my room here, reading it, and I got to the part, and I was literally sobbing so hard that I thought I was going to wake up everyone else in my house. And fortunately I didn't, but it was awful, and I think that I cried from that part all the way until the end of the book. If I can say this sort of without spoiling, I will try to, but the other thing that bothered me is that, to go against the grain, I was a fan of, I was on the team of the guy that Katniss did not end up with, and so that also really bothered me, and I really felt like Suzanne didn't do justice to him in the end and kind of just threw his character out the window for the sake of what she wanted to do and didn't do a very good job of resolving the plot. So anyways, those were all the things that were really horrifying and upsetting to me about this book, and I'm sure that most of you can sympathize. Inkdeath, which is the final installment in the Inkheart trilogy. The thing that bothered me about this one, I think, is that I really liked Inkheart, and I loved Inkspell, which was the second book, even though Inkspell, honestly, probably, in my opinion, had the actual tragic ending of this series. And so, as soon as I had finished reading that, knowing that there was another book, I ran out and bought this book for $27. Okay, that's a lot to pay for a book. But I needed to get the happy ending because Inkspell had such a tragic ending. And this book was terrible. Like, it was so disappointing. And I feel like this has happened to me before with this author, but Cornelia Funke, I don't know how you say that, but she apparently, I've experienced this before with other books of hers, I guess she doesn't really know how to end something satisfactorily, because I felt like she just, another thing, just screwed up the characters completely. Like, the characters became totally different people than they had ever been before in this book, and acted in ways that they would never have acted consistently if they were being true to who they had been developed to be throughout the first 2 books. And so that really bothered me. And this was another thing where they totally screwed up the romance, in my opinion, and Maggie, the main character, I mean, this is a spoiler, so you might want to mute your screen if you ever plan on reading these, but honestly, if you read these, I would suggest just stopping with Inkspell, because it is much better to go with that tragic ending than to read this totally awful ending. But Maggie, the main character, likes and is dating, sort of, I guess that's what you call it, this guy named Farid, and he's a really awesome guy, and I really love their relationship. But in this book, for some reason, he randomly, all out of the blue, becomes a jerk, and then this other guy shows up, this guy who has no personality, is a really really annoying and just blah. And for some reason, at the end, Father just runs off somewhere, and Maggie ends up with that guy. And there's like no development for him as a character or for the relationship. And I cried really hard after I was done reading this book because it just made me so mad. 2 of the books on my list, I do not actually have copies of them because they were library books when I was reading them. But the third one is Inheritance, which is the final book in the Inheritance cycle, which most people probably know as Aragon, which is the book about the dragon that I'm sure a lot of you have read, or at least seen the movie, which was kind of terrible, but anyways. So this series is all about this boy, Aragon, and his dragon, Saphira, and there's all these adventures and stuff, and there's another girl throughout the series, the elf girl, Arya. Inheritance is the final book, and I think it ends fairly well. It happens at the end where these characters, basically, Aragon and Saphira have to leave their home world, which I cannot remember the name of right now, and go off somewhere else on this big quest or whatever. And there's been this thing, like, throughout the series, sort of like hints of a romance between Aragon and Arya. She didn't really like him at first, but it's kind of like hinted that she might start to. But then, of course, none of that can ever happen because they have to leave and stuff. I'm sorry, I should just basically put a big spoiler warning on this entire video. But the thing that really upset me about this book is a weird feeling of, like, it hit home for me. Like, I don't know if you've ever got this feeling, but it's like, I feel like that's what happened to me. I feel like I am from this other world, and somehow I got taken away from there and, like, lost all my memories, and I don't really remember, but I have these, like, emotional memories of being in this other world, and I don't know what to do about it because obviously I can't get back there, and if I tell anyone about this, I'm being crazy. So yeah, that's what made me cry about this book, which is totally bizarre, and it doesn't usually happen to me in that extreme of sense. But Inheritance totally made me feel this way. And actually, it made a lot of people feel this way that I talked to. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a creepy feeling. So, I don't know if I really liked that book in the end. As much as it made me cry, I don't think it was a very good cry. Usually, when a book makes me cry, I really like it. But those two really, last two, really, it wasn't a good way. Okay, anyways. The fourth one is also one that I do not own. Okay. The fourth book on my list is Gregor and the Code of Claw, which is also by Suzanne Collins. It was the last book in her Underland Chronicles series, which I'm pretty sure she actually wrote before the Hunger Games. This is a pretty good series. It's a little more geared, well, it's totally geared towards younger kids, at least at the beginning of the series. And it's about this kid who lives in New York City with his baby sister, and he accidentally, like, falls down this vent in the laundry room of his apartment building, and they end up in this whole world underneath New York City with, like, giant flying bats and people that live down there called Underlanders, and there's this whole ongoing battle between the humans and the bats who are bonded to each other, and the rats and everything. And it's a really good series. And the characters are really good. Gregor is a really great character. And he makes friends with this Underland girl, Luxa, who's actually the princess, soon to be the queen of the country down there. And he ends up being bonded to his own bat, who is a flyer named Ares. There are 5 books. Every single, like, it just steadily gets darker and darker and less aimed towards children. And it was really depressing in the last book, and it was just, it's heartbreaking, because it was like a combination of the end of Mockingjay and I guess a combination of the end of Mockingjay and Inheritance, if we're going to go by books on this list, because there was like a tragic death in there, but then there's also this really tragic separation, and it made me so upset. I recommend this series. Just be prepared to be completely devastated and have your heart ripped out at the end. And this was a good cry, as in, like, this is horrible stomp on your heart, but it was a really good book and a really good series. And I honestly, I know this is blasphemy here, I really like the series and the characters a lot more than the Hunger Games, actually. So, just throwing that out there. Book 5. Once again, the end of the series. The Council of Mirrors by Michael Buckley, which is the 9th and last book in the Sisters Grimm series. Basically, the premise of it is that these two sisters, their parents get kidnapped, they've been in foster care for a long time. They find out, their grandmother comes to pick them up, who they didn't know was even alive, and they find out that they're descendants of the Brothers Grimm, and that all these fairy tales are real, and the fairy tale characters, called Ever Afters, live in this little town in New York called, Portland. Oops. Oh my goodness. I just dropped this. Okay. So, I know that sounds, you're probably thinking, just like Once Upon a Time. Actually, it really bothered me when I first heard about Once Upon a Time, because these books came first. And Once Upon a Time kind of ripped off of them in a little bit of a way, except for made it a little more for grown-ups. These are really, I guess, middle school, junior high books, which sounds silly for me to be reading them because I'm 20 years old, but I started them when I was a lot younger because it has been going on for so long for me, was really emotional, kind of like, I probably am going to get slaughtered for this comparison, like Harry Potter for some people, because I've never read Harry Potter, but I know that a lot of people feel like they grew up with those characters in those books and they were really upset by the ending of the series because of that. That's how I feel about these. Anyways, the characters in these are really good. The ending was really surprising and satisfying, and part of the reason I cried, obviously, was because one of this favorite series of my childhood was finally over. That obviously had an impact on me. The other part was, there's this character, once again, spoilers, that the main character, Sabrina, kind of has this little back and forth tension with. I mean, they're like 12 years old, so obviously there's not going to be much happening, but there's always been this hint of like, oh, these characters like each other, there might be something in the future. Well, anyways, cut to the first epilogue, and it's like 10 years later, and Sabrina is getting married, and you're like, oh, is she getting married to this guy? Well, no, she's not getting married to this guy. She's getting married to a random guy that you've never heard of before. He just pops up, and it just makes, it was like so horribly upsetting. I was like, what the heck are you doing? Why would you set this up for an entire 9 books and then just at the end throw off, oh, she's getting married to some random guy that she met? Like, no. But anyways, it's okay, because I was sobbing through that part. But then there's a second epilogue that's 16 years after that kind of gives you the hint that actually she didn't end up marrying this guy and does end up marrying the other guy that she should have been with the whole time. So, while it did make me sob, because I was upset and confused, and because this series was ending, it does have a really good ending, and it is totally worth reading. Yeah, those are just a few of the books that have made me sob fest, which is a good thing. Sad is happy for deep people. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any ideas for more videos that I can do, just let me know. See you guys later.